What is going on, everybody? Welcome into another episode of 5 on 5. I'm your host, Howard Bender, here at Fantasy Alarm, and with me today on the proverbial hot seat, none other than Matt Selz, two-time FSWA Racing Writer of the Year, manager of all tools and spreadsheets over at fantasyalarm.com, and just an all-around great guy, So, jack of all trades, Matt, how you doing today?
I am doing pretty well. You know, just speaking of spreadsheets, just created that EPL playbook that we posted because we started covering EPL now over here at Fantasy Alarm with Steve Pimental heading that up. So that was a fun spreadsheet to create. A lot of nifty little formulas that had to go in there because DraftKings and FanDuel hate me in terms of naming players. Tools are getting ready for a revamp here at Fantasy Alarm. Excited to unveil the new lineup generator we've cooked up here. So yeah, and then on top of that, there's like 3 NASCAR races coming up in the next like 8 days. So
You're a busy, busy guy.
yeah,
Not to mention all the work that you and I have been doing behind the scenes for the FSGA series of drafts that are going to be taking place on live stream here, part of the Fantasy Alarm family, Monday through Friday of all next week. So we definitely have our dance cards filled.
yes.
You know what? I got no complaints with that. I love it when Fantasy Alarm crushes everything that they do, and here we go, including souls of our competition. All right, so for those of you who might be new to the 5 on 5 game, it's very, very simple. I throw out a question or a topic to Matt. He has 5 minutes to state his argument as to, good, bad, whatever the case may be, going according to the question, his side of the story, so to speak. If he comes in under the 5 minutes, well, then he opens it up to questioning and possibly derisive comments from me to him in the middle of it all. But he cannot go over the 5 minute mark. So if he gets too verbose and we hit that 5 minute mark, you might hear me go, bah, or possibly even bzzz. And then, well, then Matt's got to just shut up. So, and then we'll move on to another topic. So, quick, simple, and relatively painless, at least from my end of the spectrum.
Yeah, making
So,
me not
Matt,
talk is pretty hard.
what not you not talking is pretty
Yes.
difficult. Yeah, I could see that. Hmm. Well, let's get right to it. Let me get my stopwatch ready and make sure that I time this out properly. Your clock, Matthew, will stop at the end of my question and/or statement. Are you ready?
I am ready. Yes.
All right. Number one, here you go. Matt, besides the DFS aspect of it and gambling, I'm going to say in gambling aspect of it too, any kind of monetary reward. Why am I watching NASCAR? Like, literally, I tuned in to the last race that we just watched from Miami Homestead Speedway, and all I got from the broadcasters were stories about the blisters on poor Austin Dillon's tush, right? Because of the ice pack breaking in Martinsville and that water heating up inside the car. That was what I got. So I got a bunch of guys driving in cars in a circle, round, 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 hearing stories about one guy's butt and how he needs a donut to sit on because of the blisters. So Matt Selz, master of the NASCAR world. Why am I watching NASCAR?
So while I do feel bad for Austin Dillon's rear end on his actual self and not the rear end of his car, that was an unfortunate incident there at Martinsville. He tried to cool himself off by putting ice packs in his personal regions, and it turned to steam and burned him. So that was unfortunate. However, I will say that you do hear stories of injuries on other sports broadcasts, so that's not all that much different. Why you should be watching NASCAR is for the intricate science and engineering and all of that, because these cars are so finely tuned that one little twist of a wrench can completely dismantle a good driver's run. So the physics of how the air passes over and under and around the cars and how you pass with shifting the air that's going around or past another car is really, really fascinating. Also, these guys are true athletes. They're losing, like at Martinsville, Austin Dillon lost like 10 or 12 pounds because he sweated it all out because it was so damn hot in that race car that night that it's grueling. Like, these guys aren't just sitting there on a Sunday drive. It's not like they've got automatic transmissions. They're manual transmissions. So you're shifting, you're shifting the car for 500 miles. And you can't miss a shift because if you miss a shift, you blow your engine up. And then that's not great. And you're doing it around 40 other people who may or may not have the best control of their car at any given time, as we've seen in recent races with crashes. Also, who doesn't like to see crashes? Like, we all love to watch train wrecks, right? This is literally live action train wrecks. Like, you get to watch a crash, you know the guy's not going to get seriously injured because the safety in those cars is phenomenal, as Ryan Newman can attest to. Like, the takeaway from the Daytona 500 this year was the last crash. It wasn't who won. It wasn't like how great the race was leading up to it. It was, dude, that guy crashed and his car caught fire and that was insane. Well, guess what? We're about to have another one at Talladega. So people love watching wrecks. People like watching interesting, physics in action. That's the best way people tend to learn physics and whatnot. And now we'll turn our attention to the pit crew. Because those guys are actual true athletes. Like, a lot of these guys play D1 football. Like, you've got to be a pretty jacked individual to be a tire changer. Those tires weigh like, I don't know, 60, 80 pounds a piece. And they're hauling them in there, changing them, turning 4 tire changes into 12-second, like, choreographed dances. It's amazing. So, I would say that you're not just watching a bunch of dudes make left-hand turns. And by the way, 3 times a year they also make right-hand turns on road courses. But you're watching physics in action. You're watching high-speed, high-risk maneuvers taking place. Everybody says they love a high-paced game, right? That's why everybody dogs on baseball, because it's too slow. And why people think basketball and hockey and football are all better because they're high-paced. Does it get more high-paced than 200 miles an hour? I don't think so. So I'm watching them for the athletes in the cars. I'm watching them for the athletes changing the tires. I'm watching it for the physics in action. And I'm watching it for the thrilling storylines and finishes that you get.
Well, guess who's got some time to grill you right now? First of all, dude, what is this? These guys are athletes. Austin Dillon lost 10 to 12 pounds in a hot car. Yeah, you know what, dude? You put me in the sauna for a couple of hours and bake me at 250 degrees. Guess what? I'm losing the weight too.
Right, but you also don't have to think about split-second decisions driving around. Now, in Martinsville, you're only really topping out about 116 miles an hour. But have you ever driven on the freeway at 116 miles an hour and you're changing lanes trying not to hit people? Imagine doing that for 5 hours, or 500 miles, rather, in a car that has no air conditioning. And by the way, half the time their power steering doesn't work.
So it's a skill. It's not necessarily like and here's the funny thing about it, because this debate comes up constantly. Are golfers athletes? Are bowlers athletes? So if you're not doing, all you're doing is sitting in a car. And yes, listen, I'm not going to diminish what that is, because guess what? I suck at driving, and I will be the first to admit that without problem. My wife had me driving on a highway the other night. Like all sorts of turns and twists and stuff like that at night. And I was like, this does not bode well for me. So I understand that it's a skill, but I can't sit here and get down with the athlete aspect of it.
Well, there's also the fact that a lot of these guys played other sports.
Oh, look at that. See, you don't even get to rebut that. I got it. You know what? I'm gonna give you 15 seconds right now to rebut the athlete argument. You ready? And go.
So a lot of these guys also played additional sports in high school, and some of them, went to college as well, and they played other sports.
I went to college. I played sports.
Okay, so they're doing this professionally, and they played other sports. It makes them an athlete.
Your 15 seconds is up. No way, dude. I will give them mad respect over and over again, but I'm not going to sit there. I'm not going to call a professional bowler an athlete. You're telling me that, somebody who looks like me and this is not nice. This is not pretty. All right, but somebody like me could get up there, throw a perfect game, and I'm an athlete. I don't know about that. I do like seeing physics in action, though. I'm not gonna lie. That was definitely a good argument. And if somebody's like, "Well, how do I see physics in action?" You have to actually like watch the broadcast too and listen to what they're saying as far as dragging and drafting and all the other stuff that goes along with that. We're gonna move on to the next topic here, Matt. Let's see what happens to you here. So in quarantine, without baseball, basketball, hockey, football, we have had to turn our attention to other sports. Let's take NASCAR off the table right now. So that we don't you don't get another.
I get paid to write about it, so
yeah. Right. I don't want. I just don't want to give you another 5 minutes to talk NASCAR again. How about that? I want to know interesting new sports that you've been watching while these major sports aren't happening, and why they're worthwhile to be watching.
All right, so everybody jokes about ESPN 8 the Ocho from Dodgeball, and how they show random sports and whatever. And by the way, that happens on Sunday mornings on ESPN, or at least it used to, where they would show random sports. Like they would stick the PBA there, or they would stick cheerleading competitions there, or I think I saw a washers competition or a cornhole. They played that too. So, I've caught some of those, but the ones that I've really followed, I haven't really caught onto the KBO that much. Like I've seen some of the games, but I haven't been watching it religiously. Mainly because I've got a lot of stuff to do, and I got to sleep at some point. So
it's way past your bedtime.
Yeah. Not my kids though. My kids tend to wake up smack in the middle of when the KBO games would be on, unfortunately. But new sports, I've been watching Jelly's Marble Runs on YouTube. It's a great channel to watch. It's just, you get into it. Like, you're watching marbles, but like the guy's created storylines for all these marbles. He's very good at announcing. Like, this guy should have an announcing career. Like, he's that good at being like an analyst and whatnot. Get you involved, and there's all sorts of different kinds of competitions. They have Marble Olympics, they have sand races, they've got a new one out right now that I've been watching. They also just did Marbula E, where they recreated racetracks from like the F1 series, and they did like a mock F1 season with them. So those have been really phenomenal to watch. Along that line, I found a channel on YouTube called 3D Bot Maker, and they do die-cast racing. So like those metal like model cars that you used to get, they
Right.
built this. They call it Race Mountain. They basically took the plastic racetracks and they glued it to what would be like a model train mountain essentially, and it's got some switchbacks, and then they race the cars down there, and there's like heats and tournaments and all sorts. It's really pretty entertaining to watch that one. So I like those. Aussie Rules Football started back up, and I'm a pretty big rugby and Aussie Rules Football fan. Several people in my family played rugby, so I actually know what the heck is going on. So yeah, those are the main ones I've started watching, but it's been a lot of marble racing. It's been a lot of die-cast, racing on YouTube. Trying to think if there's any.
What about battle bots? How come they haven't brought back battle bots? Can
yeah,
they
used to have it on
one?
Science Channel. I don't know if there's still a new season going, but those things are vicious. My dad and I were thinking of building one like a decade ago, and my mom, I think, put the kibosh on that one. Which
moms.
I guess it was more than 10 years ago, because it was still when I was in high school, so it's got to be about 20 years ago. But yeah, she figured there was better ways to spend our time than building like death robots. But yeah, that's always a fun one to watch too. Watch people's hard-built robots. Oh, and I occasionally catch replays of pumpkin chunking. You ever heard of
That's
this?
a good one too.
Yeah. Usually comes on like every year, like Thanksgiving time. They run a pumpkin chunking special, but you can find the old ones like on YouTube or Science Channel. So those are pretty fun and like out of the box ones to watch.
I like that. What about, do you do anything like competitive darts? You watch that one at all?
I do occasionally catch some darts. Not that big into darts. I did see guy Mark Rober on YouTube who is used to be a NASA engineer and now does like YouTube videos showing science and stuff. He built a programmable dartboard that would always allow you to get a bullseye. It literally tracks the dart through the air, and you can always, and then you can flip it off so that like it intentionally misses your friend's dart. Like the whole dartboard moves. So like when your friend throws it, the dartboard move. Like if the dart hits up here, the dartboard moves in the opposite direction. Um, so yeah, that's pretty fun. But yeah, I mean, it's a lot of watching, I guess, old game clips too, but not like new, like out of the box sports.
Yeah, no, I like the fact that like TV has revamped a whole bunch of game shows now. They're starting to bring that into play. But I got to be perfectly honest with you. You had me at Jelly's Marbles. Like, I mean, literally, like we've all seen the one, but we've all seen the one, like the big one, with like the like through the dirt and everything, and there's hardcore tracks, and just listening to him like do the play by play. Fantastic. But yeah, I mean, you could have left it at Jelly's Marbles, and then what we should have done was just upload a race so that people can just sit there and watch it for the last 4 minutes and 45 seconds.
And by the way, for those of you that like John Oliver, he sponsored this summer's
yes,
Jelly's Marble Runs because the guy needed sponsoring, and so he stepped up and sponsored it. So the Marble Olympics, I guess, or the Marble Games that are coming out this summer, will be sponsored by the John Oliver and Last Week Tonight, and it's going to charity. The winners, the Marble winners give checks to charity, like actual physical checks.
Dude,
for charity,
I mean, I'm on their page right now on YouTube.
You can waste a lot of time on that page very easily.
It's so good. It's so good. All right. I literally would love to sit and go over that more, but we'll move on to the next topic here. It's Jelle.
Yeah.
That's how you spell it. Just go to YouTube. If you don't know what they are, then you're going to thank us later. You're also going to get pissed at us because we're just sending you down a rabbit hole right now.
Yeah, it's a never-ending rabbit hole.
You're never going to get out of it.
Your wallet also might not like us because you're probably going to want to go buy yourself some marble sets and go build your own racetracks.
What, next topic of conversation here. And this one's going to revolve around MLB. Now, at the time that we're recording this versus the time this is actually going to air, there may or may not be a deal done between MLB and MLBPA. It is Wednesday right now that we're talking, and there's rumors of stuff going back and forth, but who the hell knows at this point? Nevertheless, the MLB draft did happen. We saw it was truncated draft brought down to 5 rounds only, which leaves out a ton of other guys. However, everybody always puts all this attention on the first round, and nobody really dives a whole lot deeper. I mean, unless you're MLB Pipeline or Matt Selz. So, with that, Matt, I want to know who the most intriguing prospects are who were not taken in the first round, but did get taken in the MLB draft next week.
Last
week.
we're gonna start out with the Cubs pick in the second round. Took a guy named Burl Caraway. He's a relief pitcher, strictly a reliever out of Dallas Baptist, so he's a college pitcher. And he may have the fastest track to the majors of any pitcher taken this year. Especially with the theoretical expanded rosters that we've all been rumored to hear that are coming for 2020. I mean, we know how the Cubs like to rotate through their relievers, so this guy has some pretty nice stuff. He's got a heater that sits about 96, can hit almost 100. It's got nice life to it, and the curve is really his second best pitch. So he's a fastball curveball type pitcher. If you're looking for an impact reliever right now, Caraway could be that guy. And depending on the game lengths and how teams use their rosters, we may actually see a lot more relievers be valuable in fantasy baseball this year than starters, because you could get sneaky wins. They could get a lot more bullpen type games going on. And for those of you that play in leagues that don't just count strikeouts, but count strikeouts per nine or K percentage, relievers are really where you make your mark there. So that's one really intriguing guy. He did close a little bit in college, had a 15.6 strikeout per 9 inning mark. The second guy was technically drafted in the first round of the 2018 draft, but then went in the second round of this year's draft. His name is JT Ginn. He was drafted by the Dodgers originally at the 30th overall pick, and decided that the price that they were willing to pay him was not worth staying out of Mississippi State for. So he went to Mississippi State and now became a second round pick for the New York Mets. He's a pretty interesting guy. He had to work on his delivery quite a bit, because there was a lot of effort there and a lot of moving parts to it. So, the Mets are probably going to give him a shot to be a starter full time, but there is still a chance that he winds up in the bullpen long term because of the delivery, the arm action. He could be a little bit of a durability concern. So those are a couple of guys out of the second round, and rounding out the second round was a guy named Landon Knack, who was taken by the aforementioned Dodgers is the last pick of the second round. He's another pitcher that's pretty interesting. There's some debate as to whether he'll be a starter or a reliever. My guess is the Dodgers would probably use him more as a reliever to fast track him a little bit more, and also shorten the amount of pitches he has to learn to control. So those are a couple of guys. And then we'll round this out here with a guy that has really confounded scouts, to be honest, because he was both a starter and a reliever in college. But the problem was, when he relieved, he had an 8.7 walk per 9 inning rate, and when he was a starter, it dropped to like 1.8 walks per 9 innings, which doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense here. Because usually you like to see it go, you see it go the other way. That guy was also taken by the Dodgers. I'm blanking on his name at the Clayton Beeter is his name. Was a college pitcher out of Texas Tech. So it's a little bit tricky to figure out if they're going to use him as a reliever to fast track him, or they'd rather keep him as a starter, because the control issues seem to go away when he's a starter. But his stuff is again, he's got a mid-90s fastball just like everybody else, but he's got two power-breaking pitches, a wipeout curveball, and a slider that's really, really nice, and some, including myself, think it's actually ahead of the curveball. So he's got 4 pitches. He could be a starter. That's probably how they're going to use him. So those are some intriguing pitching prospects.
Now, this last guy, what is, during the starts that he makes, what are his first inning or two of each start look like? I mean, are they just terrible? And
no, they're actually really good. Like you would expect, if he can go for 1 or 2 innings in a start and look good, that he should be able to go for 1 or 2 innings in the bullpen and look good. But I think there's just a mental thing that, when he knows he's starting a game and it's in his control, he can control things better when he's coming out of the bullpen.
Well, you can't sneak in. You can't sneak in extra words like that.
Yeah, I just didn't want it to end on the word coming, because that's a little...
Oh, stop it. Dude, there's a family show.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I was trying to finish it off.
Gee. Oh, finishing it off.
And his last name is Peter.
Matt. Matt, your kids can't watch this show now. Unbelievable. Oh, my God. Oh, Lordy. Oh, Lord. I don't even know. I don't even have a response to that. So I'm just going to move on to the next one in honor of our NFL draft guide coming out, and you being the responsible one to talk red zone. Well, the question is in the current NFL, why does studying what happens inside the red zone matter for fantasy football?
Yeah, so obviously the trick to winning fantasy football is getting the most points from your receivers and running backs and frankly quarterbacks, right? And we're all used to huge plays. We all just expect, oh, the NFL's a big play type league. You see all the highlights every week. Oh, here goes a 45-yard pass. Here goes like a 60-yard bomb, whatnot. Would it surprise you to know that over the last 4 years, about 80% of the touchdowns scored in the NFL total have come inside the red zone? So if you need points from touchdowns, which are usually the hardest projection to make for a guy from year to year because so many things changes in terms of personnel and coaches and just performance from year to year. You want the guys that are featured in the red zone because 80% of touchdowns come inside the 20-yard line. So that's reason number one to focus on red zone. The other reason is, people like to get the top guy from offenses, right? Obviously, you just assume, hey, he's the top guy, he's going to show up no matter what, like DJ Chark in Jacksonville, or the lead receiver in Detroit, whose name is escaping me at the moment.
Kenny Galladay.
Kenny Galladay. Thank you very much. Well, here's the thing. Some of those teams really suck in the red zone. Like, really suck. So if 80% of the touchdowns come from inside the red zone, and those teams suck in the red zone, that tends to mean they're scoring less touchdowns, which means, theoretically, less overall production for those guys in general in terms of a touchdown load, which gives you 6 points just for the guy getting in the end zone. So, those are key reasons why you should always look at red zone stats and not just necessarily, oh, this guy got it and this guy didn't. You need to look at the schemes too, because there are certain schemes that feature certain receivers and certain positions over other positions in the red zone. Like, perfect example, everybody is assuming that Mike Gesicki in Miami is going to have a breakout year simply because he had a very good year last year. He ran, a lot of stuff out of the slot, and Chan Gailey is there now, and Chan Gailey once had Tony Gonzalez, who put up a 1,000-yard season. Well, Chan Gailey, that's the only 1,000-yard season that his tight ends have put up. Other than that, every other one is ranked 28th or worse in the NFL in terms of, tight ends. So just because Mike Gesicki is there and he had a good year last year, and we're just assuming that, that's going to lead to more stuff, the coach he's dealing with doesn't bear out. So you need to study these systems and figure out who gets the looks typically in those systems in the red zone to really have success at cashing in on the touchdowns week after week.
Aren't you kind of shooting yourself in the foot talking about 80% of the touchdowns coming from the red zone and these teams sucking in the red zone? Like, you used Kenny Galladay for an example. Kenny Galladay led the league in receiving touchdowns last year with 11. He also had almost 1,200 yards. So, obviously Detroit sucks in the red zone, but yet it's not holding back Kenny Galladay's production at all.
Yes and no. Because a perfect example was prior to last season, I compared the Chiefs and the Packers. Patrick Mahomes had 50 passing touchdowns coming into last year, right? The year before, he had 50 passing touchdowns. 35 of them were inside the red zone, okay? Tyreek Hill had 12 receiving touchdowns. That's a lot of receiving touchdowns. Only 5 of them were inside the red zone. Okay, so if he's not getting big plays, it didn't work out. Meanwhile, for Green Bay, they only produced, Aaron Rodgers had a lower percentage of his touchdowns come from the red zone, but Davante Adams, who is his top receiver, who put up, I think, also 12 touchdowns that year, if I'm not mistaken, had like 11 or 10 or 11 of them in the red zone, and everybody just assumes they're a big play thing. So that's what I'm getting at. Is that just because Kenny Galladay led the league in touchdowns doesn't necessarily mean they were all created equal. Because if they're all big plays in which he broke tackles on, who's to say those are repeatable this year?
Right. Well, that part I get you. And we're done with that segment there. But I mean, that last part, I get you on that as far as, who the big play guys are versus who gets the consistent targets. But you look at a guy like, just for an example, Keenan Allen, a guy who sees a high percentage of red zone targets. In a year where he's healthier, he's playing. I'm still looking at him at 6 touchdowns in comparison to Galladay's 11. So, I struggle with, that there's a direct correlation. I guess the biggest problem is that touchdowns really, because fantasy football is so touchdown centric and it's so reliant on touchdowns for big bulk points there. Um, it's tough to turn around and say inefficiency in the red zone, based on how many opportunities they have there. It's kind of tough to correlate that to the individual guy who's getting a 32% target share on his team, and whether they're coming in the red zone or not. Yes, can you rely on the big plays? No. Can you rely on the consistency from the guys who are big plays? No. Like Tyreek Hill's a great guy. Like give him a second round pick for most people. But if you look, I mean, his touchdowns were like last year were all centered around like a small handful of games.
Right.
That's so.
I mean, that's the other thing. But to go back to Keenan Allen, I mean, Phillip Rivers wasn't really Phillip Rivers last year. They also had a pretty decent run game. And the other thing is that only generally speaking, roughly 12% of passing yards throughout the last 4 years have been put up in the red zone, which tends to make sense. It's a smaller section of the field. They're going to split between running and passing. Generally, more running happens in the red zone. So you're saying 32% target share, but it's in a smaller amount of passes. So,
Right.
Well,
yeah, I mean, that's the age-old debate right there. I mean, who do you want? You want the guy with the higher target rate no matter what, or the guy who, is in the higher, more high-octane, higher passing rate offense?
Because Kenny Galladay, obviously, we all know the Lions don't run. Like, there's no reason for them to have a running back on the field, because I think it just makes the 11th guy, but they should just put an extra tackle out there, because they don't use them at all. So, I mean, that's where studying the system comes in though too, because you have to know what the teams are going to do. Like Seattle's a great example. Now that they have DK Metcalf, they can throw it up big to DK Metcalf and let that guy go feed. Whereas in the Super Bowl, they probably should have run it and didn't, and threw it to a guy who got picked off. So, that's where studying the systems come in too.
We preach that in the draft guide as well. Check out the red zone articles from Matt. You can check out the team systems from yours truly. Let's wrap things up today. Let's put on a nice little happy fun note here. Everybody loves nostalgia, don't they? So Matt Selz, I want to hear your favorite sports memories from either watching sports or going to the live event. Like I know, you down in the middle of the track at NASCAR was got to be one of the highlights of your life. I can see your little NASCAR boner popping through right now. Let's go through it. You've got 5 minutes to tell me your favorite sports memories, and go.
Yeah. So there's quite a list here. It's kind of hard to separate them. Obviously, last year's World Series win. A Yankees fan and I'm a Nationals fan. Yes, I get a lot of crap for it. They're in two separate leagues. Deal with it. Whatever. So watching the Nationals win after the horrific start to the year that they had, going 19-31, and everybody, including myself at times, thought that they were not going to make anywhere. And then the whole run against the Brewers, and then the home run against the Dodgers and whatnot. So that's got to go way up there, because that's just, yes, I've seen plenty of New York Yankees World Series titles, but to be honest, they just feel different when you have 27 of them than when you watch your team win the first one that they've ever won. So that's up there. Going to Daytona last July as a credentialed member of the media, that was pretty sweet. Because not only did I get to watch a live NASCAR race from the infield and whatever, but it's just really cool to be a credentialed member of the media and be like, hey, I actually cover this. I belong in the media center. It's pretty cool. There's a funny one from when I was a kid. My grew up in the DC area. My parents and I went to, I think, a Yankees Orioles game at Camden Yards one time, and my mother never saw any score happen in the game. The game ended like 10-8. She never saw a score because every time she got up to go to the bathroom or or get a drink or some food or something is when the scoring would happen. And then she would sit there for like 4 innings and nothing would happen. And then she would get up and go to the bathroom and bam, somebody hit a grand slam. So it was like it was just fun watching her get frustrated that she didn't get to see any of like the 18 runs scored in the game. I guess I had to go to Phil Mickelson finally winning a major at the Masters. Didn't get to watch it happen live. I had to go to work before the end of that round finished, so my parents taped it, and then nobody told me what happened. And when I got home, I was able to watch it and watch him win. That was pretty cool. Being at Kansas State's basketball arena for when we beat KU for the first time in 30 years at home, that was pretty sweet. It was ungodly loud in that arena. Still probably the loudest thing I've heard, except for, being at a live NASCAR race. Also rushing the field at K-State when we beat Texas and ended their back-to-back national championship hopes. That was pretty sweet. So it kind of runs the gamut here. My dad was at the Miracle at the Meadowlands Monday night game with the Jets when they came back from like 31 points down to beat the Dolphins.
Yep.
So that was that's, pretty fun. Another one, a sentimental one for me, is allowing my now 6-year-old daughter, who was not 6 at the time, obviously, to stay up and watch the end of the Cubs-Indians Game 7 of the World Series. Because if you remember, I was like, she may not see this happen again in her lifetime, given both of these teams.
It's been 109 years since they won the last one.
And the Indians haven't won one since 1948. So it's legitimately a concern that neither one will win in her lifetime. So I was like, when is she going to get the chance to see this again? So we decided to keep her up. And then the rain delay happened at the end of the 9th inning. And it was already like almost midnight Central Time. And I'm like, this kid's like a year and a half old, like 2 years old. I'm going to have to bear the brunt of this tomorrow because I'm the one staying home with her and she ain't going to get a full night's sleep.
Was she cognizant of what was going on?
No, she really had no idea. But
so she's just like, Mom and Dad are just keeping me up like this and I don't understand what's going on.
She kind of knew. She liked the Cubbies logo because she could say Cubbies at that point.
Okay.
She liked the song that they sang every time the Cubs win song or whatever. But in terms of like what it actually meant in historical significance, no, there's no way she had any concept. So yeah, I would say that those are the Capitals winning the Stanley Cup. I actually, my wife and I celebrated our 5th year wedding anniversary about a week and a half ago. And in my post, I actually listed the sports droughts that have ended during our
union
marriage, and it started with the Triple Crown drought ended during our wedding reception that year.
All right.
When American Pharoah won the Triple Crown, that was during our wedding reception.
All right. Well, so your union, basically your nuptials, have helped numerous franchises and sporting events around the world.
Yeah.
You also, need Child Protective Services called on you for making a 1.5-year-old stay up through an extra inning rain delay game.
Yeah, the rain delay really put a wrench in the plans.
Really put the kibosh on that.
I wasn't sure what we were gonna do at that point.
From Father of the Year to we need to get a social worker in here is really what we got to do. Well, Matthew Selz, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure. Love hearing a lot of those sports moments for you. That's always great. It's always great to hear when somebody can sit and celebrate a number of things, whether they were there in person or they watched it on TV. Still something to say about being a part of it and having it be a part of you. So Love it. Can't wait for all the NASCAR content to come rolling out over the next couple of days. You're going to be a busy, busy guy. I know that. So, on that note, I'll say, well, thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Be sure to follow us on Facebook at fantasyalarm.com, our YouTube page, Fantasy Alarm. Pop that into the search bar. And then, of course, on Twitter, what? At Fantasy Alarm. That's right. Oh, and Instagram, too. At Fantasy Alarm on Instagram. I actually just put a little MLB post up there just before this. So
Yeah, go watch Howard try to dodge a murder hornet.
oh yeah, you can also go watch me try to dodge a murder hornet. Definite fun times. That's gonna do it for us here on 5 on 5. Big thank you to Matt Selz as always. Not only just starring in this, but also producing it as well. I'm Howard Bender of Fantasy Alarm. Thanks so much for watching. We'll catch you next time.